Hello everyone and welcome back to the sessions on financial reporting. Friends, in this class of financial reporting, we are continuing with the topic consolidated financial statements. This is the fifth lecture on consolidated financial statements. Within this chapter, we have started learning consolidation procedures. When we started with consolidation procedures, we have seen what are the various components of consolidated financial statements, and the major component of consolidated financial statements, it is consolidated balance sheet. So friends, within consolidation procedures, we are going to first hit the preparation and presentation of consolidated balance sheet. Now this will be the major calculative part of the chapter, and here onward we are definitely stepping into more of calculative content, maybe entering into full-fledged big questions of presenting consolidated balance sheets. Now, how to consolidate the balance sheet of a parent with its subsidiaries? Now, you have learned few things already. What you are going to do is, you would have become a parent company. I am considering that you are an entity who is a parent company. So if you are a parent company, the obvious reason by which you became a parent company was by making an investment in a subsidiary. So you have made an investment, you are an investor. In your separate financial statements, there will be an item of investments titled as investment in shares of subsidiary. The very first thing that you are going to do is to eliminate that investment. You have to knock off that investment when you are preparing a consolidated balance sheet. So understand one thing, that component of investment in subsidiary should appear in the parent company's balance sheet only when it is a separate balance sheet. The moment it is a consolidated balance sheet, that investment will not appear. Why that investment will not appear? Understand that logically. It is an investment made in subsidiary, and now when you are talking about consolidated balance sheet, all assets and liabilities of the entire group are merged together. In that case, investment made in subsidiary is as good as an investment made within an entity which is part of the group, and therefore that investment will be eliminated. When you eliminate that investment, against elimination of that investment, there is something that you will have to recognize. So what is recognized in your consolidated balance sheet or consolidated financial statements are all the assets and liabilities of the subsidiary. So you will record all the assets of the subsidiary at their fair values. You will record all the liabilities of the subsidiary at their fair values. If it is 100% subsidiary, against this asset and liabilities, what you are recording, you just write off that investment within the same entry. That means the elimination of investment will happen in the same entry. Any difference will give rise to either goodwill or gain on bargain purchase. We have learnt this concept already, correct? So what happens, by far you have just been passing a journal entry. If you can see, suppose it is a case of a fully owned subsidiary. At the time of consolidation, what entry you will pass? The assets of subsidiary will be debited, the liabilities of subsidiary will be credited. Both these will be recognized at their respective fair values. Whatever consideration you have paid for this is reflected by way of the carrying amount of investment. So you credit that investment also in that same entry. Because it is an example of a fully owned subsidiary, there is no component identified as non-controlling interest. So what will happen? Any difference in the values will give rise to either goodwill or gain on bargain purchase. The gain on bargain purchase will be transferred to capital reserve. We have learnt these things already by way of that journal entry. But now what you are going to do is reflect the outcome of that journal entry in the balance sheet. So visualize from the separate balance sheet of the parent company, from the asset side you will knock off that investment, that is investment in subsidiary. In the assets you will bring all the assets of subsidiary. In the liabilities you will bring all the liabilities of the subsidiary. If there is any goodwill or gain on bargain purchase, that will be further identified as goodwill or capital reserve in your consolidated balance sheet. Now, if there is not a case of fully owned subsidiary, and suppose you have made only investment to the extent of 70%, then 30% of the equity interest of the subsidiary is held by a smaller group of shareholders, which we call as non-controlling interest. In that case, non-controlling interest will be measured either at fair value or at proportionate net assets of the subsidiary, and based on that, that non-controlling interest will be placed in the consolidated balance sheet under the head equity itself. Mind it, when you are presenting equity and liability within the consolidated balance sheet, non-controlling interest should not be presented as a liability. It is one of the component of equity. Why? Because it is representing the ownership of equity interest, but not held by the parent company, held by those other shareholders. So this non-controlling interest will be presented necessarily as a component of equity. Now friends, what would happen if you are trying to present a consolidated balance sheet? Let us move step by step. So what you will do is, all the assets of the subsidiary will be merged with the assets of the parent company within the consolidated balance sheet, and these merging of assets will be on respective headings. For example, the property, plant and equipment of subsidiary company will be merged with the parent company. Now here you have to take caution. You will continue to measure the assets of parent company at their respective carrying amounts and the assets of subsidiary at their fair values. So what you are going to do when you are presenting consolidated balance sheet, the first thing that you will report is non-current assets, property, plant and equipment. Within that head property, plant and equipment, you will pick property, plant and equipment from the balance sheet of parent company. You will also pick the property, plant and equipment of the subsidiary, but the carrying amount of parent company will be considered and the fair value of subsidiary will be considered. If there is no information with respect to the fair value of the assets of subsidiary company, you are simply going to consider whatever be the book values of the subsidiary's assets will be same considered as fair values. Thereafter, you take intangible assets of parent company, to that you merge intangible assets of subsidiary. Again same concept, the intangible assets of parent company will be taken at their book values, the intangible assets of subsidiaries will be taken at their fair values. Thereafter, after these two components, when we talk about investments, all investments will be stated in consolidated balance sheet as well, but investment within the subsidiary will be eliminated, and therefore that investment should not appear in consolidated balance sheet. Thereafter, current assets of parent will be merged with the current assets of subsidiary, inventory with inventory, debtors with debtors, bills receivable with bills receivable, cash balances with cash balances. Just keep on merging all the assets. We will encounter some adjustments with respect to these assets, and those will be adjustments relating to intra-group transactions. We will come to that segment as well, but right now I want you to focus on this one part very clearly. That is, when we are dealing with consolidated financial statements and we are dealing with all assets and liabilities merged, you have to finally find out, is it a case of goodwill arising on acquisition or gain on bargain purchase arising? If there is a gain on bargain purchase, it will be transferred to capital reserve and separately reported under other equity. That is one thing. Now what happens to subsidiaries capital? So capital and the other equity of the subsidiary itself represent the net assets of the subsidiary, which has already been considered along with the calculation of goodwill or gain on bargain purchase arising at the date of acquisition. Let me explain you this once again. When you are dealing with the net assets of the subsidiary company, you should know what is the meaning of net assets of subsidiary. It will be fair value of assets minus fair value of liabilities resulting into net assets, one way to arrive at that. But in absence of information, the only other way to arrive at net assets would be taking the share capital of the subsidiary company. To that you will add the other equity components of subsidiary company, and that would sum up to the net assets at the acquisition date. So friends, that profit earned up to the date of acquisition will be part of the other equity of the subsidiary. So friends, what we will do is we will discuss this whole matter in two different stages. One stage where immediately after the balance sheet date the shares have been acquired, or at the balance sheet date the shares have been acquired. So what will be the scenario over there? Whatever be the profit reported by subsidiary in its balance sheet are all the profits earned prior to acquisition of shares. In that case, no part of profit of subsidiary would ever come to profit and loss balance of the parent company, which is belonging to the period prior to acquisition. What I am trying to tell you is, if 1/4/2020 is the date of acquisition and the balance sheet given to you is also of the same date, that means all the profit reported by the subsidiary company at this date are the profits that subsidiary company has earned before the acquisition date, and parent company will not take a penny of that profit into its P&L, because that much profit will be part of the net assets of subsidiary at the acquisition date. So that part of profit will simply be part of the net assets of subsidiary, and that will be considered for computation of goodwill or gain on bargain purchase at the acquisition date. That is one thing. Now friends, you are going to learn something about elimination of intra-group transactions at a later stage. But let me tell you one more thing that we have learned right from the time of business combination chapter. Just recall one thing: if the acquisition of shares in the subsidiary has been done in stages, so we call that as a step acquisition or acquisition in stages. In that case, goodwill or gain on bargain purchase should not arise gradually. It will arise only at one point of time, that is the date on which the control is acquired. That's all. Any previously held interest in subsidiary will be measured at fair value and added to the consideration. We have learned these things also with earlier situations and questions right from the point of the chapter business combination, and in previous two classes also we had been talking about the same. Now once you get that goodwill or gain on bargain purchase, it will be arising only and only once. So that will arise only at the date of acquisition. It will not be computed earlier, it will not be computed later, that's all. So when the acquisition is done in stages, the consolidation procedure should begin only and only from the acquisition date. So friends, too much of theoretical discussion is happening, I understand, but you need to definitely discuss these points before we step into questions. So what I want from you all is, you should be very thorough with these points that we have discussed, and when we start solving questions, you should be again finding yourself at ease, at comfort, and there should be no hassle in understanding the concepts. So let us do one thing. Let us first write notes about what we have just discussed, and thereafter we will take a full-fledged question where it will be a case of consolidated balance sheet to be prepared. So let us first write those notes. So based on what we have discussed, preparation of consolidated balance sheet, assets and liabilities of subsidiary company are merged with those of the holding company. Equity, share capital and other equity of the subsidiary company are apportioned between holding company and non-controlling interest. Investment in shares of subsidiary company are not shown in consolidated balance sheet. resulting goodwill or capital reserve, that is gain on bargain purchase, shall be presented in consolidated balance sheet. So friends, first write up this much, then I take you ahead. Alright friends, you would have finished writing this whole thing. Let us move ahead and write some additional notes. As per Ind AS 110, if an entity makes two or more investments in another entity at different dates and eventually obtain control of the other entity, the consolidated financial statements are presented only from the date on which holding subsidiary relationship comes in existence. So basically that date will be the date of acquisition. In other words, the date at which the control is obtained over the investee or the acquiree. Anyway, next point, as per Ind AS 103, goodwill is computed only once when control is obtained. Any previously held interest in the acquiree is fair valued and aggregated with consideration for computation of goodwill or bargain purchase gain, and that is done only and only at the acquisition date. So friends, please write up this also and then we shall move ahead. Alright friends, you would have finished writing this whole thing. Let us move ahead and take up that calculative example which is given in question number 44. Let us read this question. On 1/4/2019, balance sheet of H Limited and S Limited are as given below. Now you have been given equity share capital, shares of rupees 100 each, reserves and liabilities. Then the assets are including investments, that is in the books of H Limited, indicating 8,000 shares in S Limited, and sundry assets of both the companies given to you. Further, on the same date, H Limited acquired shares in S Limited for cash. Prepare consolidated balance sheet of H Limited on 1/4/2019, assuming that NCI is measured at proportionate net asset method. So friends, before we start going ahead with the solution, let us first understand what has been informed. So first of all, the balance sheet of these two companies are dated 1/4/2019. At the same date, we are finding that H Limited has acquired shares in S Limited for cash. That means if you can identify one of the asset of H Limited is investments, that is 8,000 shares in S Limited which is held by H Limited. Now if you can identify the total share capital of S Limited is 10 lakhs and these comprise of shares of rupees 100 each. So if you can find the number of shares in S Limited, it will be 10 lakh divided by rupees 100 each, that would give you 10,000 shares. Out of 10,000 shares in S Limited, 8,000 shares are held by H Limited, which represents 80% of shareholding in S Limited. And that is why we can say H Limited could successfully acquire control of S Limited. The date of acquisition of that control is 1/4/2019 and the balance sheets are also having the same date. As a result, if you look into this reserves that represents other equity of both the companies, all these reserves and profit balances included over here are representing all the profits earned up to the date of acquisition. So we are finding one thing very clearly, that after the acquisition, not a single rupee of profit has been earned by either companies, particularly by the subsidiary company. So what we have to do is observe one thing: the acquisition of these shares that has already been recorded by the company H Limited. So what do you think would have been the journal entry that H Limited would have passed for acquiring these shares? It would have been simply shares in S Limited debit to bank account, and the cost of these investments would have been 16,50,000. This entry has already been passed by H Limited in its accounting records. That is how it is reflected in its separate financial statements, that is in its balance sheet drawn on 1st April 2019. So what we have theoretically understood, when we present consolidated balance sheet, we are simply going to take aggregate of these assets, that is assets of H Limited will be merged with assets of S Limited. Likewise, liabilities of H Limited will be merged with the liabilities of S Limited. Now regarding the equity of H and S Limited, it is only the share capital of H Limited which will be presented in the consolidated balance sheet, and only the reserves of H Limited that will be presented in consolidated balance sheet. So what happens to equity and reserves of S Limited? The equity, share capital and other equity of subsidiary as at the date of acquisition, these two amounts would represent the net assets in S Limited. And can you see, if H Limited has acquired 8,000 shares, means it has acquired 80% of net assets of S Limited. So what we can see, net assets of S Limited are aggregated to 10 plus 10, 20 lakhs. Alternatively, you may also find the net assets by taking sundry assets minus liabilities. 25 lakhs minus 5 lakhs will also give you 20 lakhs. The fact of the matter is, the total net asset of subsidiary company at the acquisition date is 20 lakhs. Now, parent company has 80% stake in subsidiary. So what you will do is 80% of 20 lakhs would be 16 lakhs. That 16 lakhs is the net asset of S Limited that belongs to H Limited, which H Limited has purchased for 16 lakh 50,000. So we can easily trace out that the excess payment made over here is rupees 50,000, which would represent goodwill arising on acquisition. So what you will do is, you will eliminate these two components. You will also eliminate this investment. You will then recognize non-controlling interest that would represent the remaining 20% stake in S Limited, which is not held by H Limited. And as per the requirement of the question, it will be measured at proportionate net asset method. So it will be 20% of 20 lakhs, that would come to 4 lakhs. So you are going to eliminate both of these against this investment, and then you are going to recognize two new components. One is the goodwill arising on acquisition and another is that non-controlling interest. And regarding other assets and liabilities, the balances of S Limited will simply be merged with H Limited, and that is how you are going to present the consolidated balance sheet. So let us see how to present the solution. In your solution, you will first present a calculation of shareholding percentage by H Limited in S Limited. So first of all, the number of shares in S Limited will be total share capital divided by the par value of each share, that is rupees 10 lakhs divided by rupees 100 per share would give you 10,000 shares. The number of shares in S Limited held by H Limited, it is given as 8,000 shares. So shareholding percentage by H Limited in S Limited will be 8,000 shares divided by 10,000 shares, and that would give 0.8 or 80%. Thereafter, we have also discussed one thing, that before the consolidation begins, the parent company would have already passed an accounting entry that would be investments, that is shares in S Limited debit to bank account, that is by 16 lakh 50,000. It is because of this entry that investment in the balance sheet of H Limited is appearing. So please take note of this whole thing, and then we shall move ahead. Alright friends, you would have finished writing this whole thing. Let us move ahead and now take the next calculation, that is goodwill or gain on bargain purchase that would arise. So you know how to do this calculation. This is very simple. You had been doing so many times. Fair value of consideration is 16,50,000. NCI valued at proportionate net assets, which as of now we don't know. So what we will do is, we will now take the fair value of assets of S Limited, which is 25 lakhs, less fair value of liabilities of S Limited, which is 5 lakhs. So fair value of net assets of S Limited will be 20 lakhs. Friends, I have told you one thing, that you can arrive at the net assets of subsidiary company S Limited either by taking assets minus liabilities or by taking aggregate of share capital and other equity. Either way you will be getting this value as 20 lakhs. That 20 lakhs representing net assets of S Limited, based on proportionate net assets, NCI will be 20% of 20 lakhs. So we write over here 20% of 20 lakhs and that comes to 4 lakhs. Aggregate of these two components will be 20,50,000 and the net assets is 20 lakhs. So clearly observable that goodwill will be A minus B, that will be 20,50,000 minus 20 lakhs, that comes to rupees 50,000. So please take note of this working and then we shall move ahead. Alright friends, you would have finished writing these calculations. Let us move ahead and write up the accounting entry on the date of acquisition. So after acquiring the investments, if you are going ahead with the consolidated financial statements, it is this accounting entry that you will pass. So what you will do is, the assets of subsidiary company will be debited. So acquired assets debit at their given value 25 lakhs. The resulting goodwill which is arising on acquisition will also be debited. The investment which is appearing in the balance sheet of parent company will be eliminated in this entry, because that is the consideration that you have paid, correct? So instead of writing consideration, you would write over here 2 shares in S Limited, because this is lying as an asset in the separate balance sheet of H Limited. You will also record the acquired liabilities, and finally the non-controlling interest will also be recognized over here in this consolidation entry. So you will write to NCI, which is measured at 4 lakhs, being recognition for consolidation of assets and liabilities of S Limited against the investments. So friends, please write up this entry and then we shall go ahead with the balance sheet. Alright friends, you would have finished writing this entry. Let us move ahead and record the consolidated balance sheet. So what you are going to do, in the balance sheet asset side, you will first take the aggregate of sundry assets of both the companies. Investment will be eliminated, goodwill will be recognized, and there is no other asset. So you would take the total of the assets. Then coming to the equity share capital only of parent company will be taken. Other equity or reserves balance only of parent company will be taken. Further, what will be recognized as a new component of equity will be non-controlling interest, and liabilities will simply be aggregate of liabilities of both the companies, and you would see that the balance sheet gets matched up. So friends, this was a very simple scenario that we have taken up. So just to give you a briefing of what could be the steps involved in presenting consolidated balance sheet. We have yet to deal with complicated situations ahead, but this will give you a fundamental ground of presenting consolidated balance sheet. So friends, do one thing, write up this whole thing, and that will be end of the solution. Alright friends, you would have finished writing this whole thing. Let us move ahead and talk about the next concept that we have to discuss, that is elimination of intra-group transactions. So first of all, we are talking about intra-group transactions and we are trying to eliminate intra-group transactions. So let us split the whole discussion into two segments. First of all, what are intra-group transactions and why is that elimination required and how will that elimination be made? So one by one, when we say intra-group transactions means within the group, say parent has sold goods to subsidiary or parent would have purchased goods from subsidiary, and in such type of transactions generally the seller of the goods would have charged profit on sale. That means at the time of invoicing those goods, the vendor party, the seller party, between the two would have charged profit definitely. And if these goods remain unsold by the balance sheet date, that is the date at which the consolidated balance sheet is presented, then the goods are carried over at something more than the cost. We would say that in that case the inventory of those goods are lying at something more than cost. Now conceptually, as per Ind AS 2, the inventory cannot be carried over at anything more than the cost. Let me give you this thing by example. Suppose cost of the inventory is 80,000. I am a parent company, you are a subsidiary company. Cost of the inventory is 80,000. I sold it to you for 1 lakh. So obviously I have made a profit of rupees 20,000 because two of us, myself parent, you being subsidiary, we two are separate entities. I have made a profit, but now if that inventory is still lying with you at the date of consolidation, the consolidated balance sheet will not accept the inventory to be reported at 1 lakh rupee of value because that is the invoice value of inventory. It is to be reported at cost for the group. For the group as a whole, the cost is not 1 lakh, the cost is 80,000. So first of all, how much is the profit included in that transaction which is still included in that inventory? It is rupees 20,000. That profit is known as unrealized profit. So how would you eliminate that? It was the parent who has sold goods. So from the parent's profit, you are going to remove that profit which is unrealized and the corresponding effect will be given to the reduction of inventory. So whatever be the amount by which you are reducing the balance of consolidated P&L is the same amount by which you will reduce the value of the inventory, and that is how you are going to treat this unrealized profit on intercompany transaction. Now this is one thing. What if the subsidiary company would have sold goods? Then also the same thing. So this time you will eliminate that 20,000 of unrealized profit not from the parent's profit and loss statement but from the profit and loss of subsidiary. In such case, if it is a fully owned subsidiary, no problem, but if it is a partly owned subsidiary, if some portion of that is owned by non-controlling interest, what will happen is the profit of subsidiary, if it is eliminated in the name of an unrealized profit, the unrealized profit will be reduced from the profit of subsidiary, and that reduction will affect not only the parent company but also to the non-controlling interest. In other words, the impact on the consolidated P&L will be only to the extent of the percentage owned. For example, if the parent company is holding 80% shares in the subsidiary and the subsidiary's profit is getting eliminated, then 80% of that profit reduction will affect the parent company in its consolidated profit and loss statement, and 20% of that profit reduction will affect the NCI because the value of NCI or non-controlling interest will be reduced by that amount. Now friends, this was about cases of unrealized profit. Now there can be losses also, correct? There may be cases of losses. I am going to now talk about cases of unrealized losses. Now imagine that parent has sold an asset, parent has sold a property to its subsidiary. The parent has sold a property to subsidiary at a loss. So the carrying amount of the property in the records of parent was suppose 18 lakhs and the property has been sold for just rupees 16 lakhs. So because parent is a separate entity from the subsidiary, at the time the individual transaction of sale of property was recognized by the parent must have recognized a loss. The question is, when we are consolidating the financial statements of that subsidiary with the parent, what will happen is the resulting loss at the time of sale of property would be considered to be unrealized loss. Why? Because for the group as a whole, the cost of that property is not 16 lakhs, cost of that property is 18 lakhs. So you are going to eliminate the unrealized losses also. So unrealized losses, when you eliminate, you are going to increase the balance of profit and simultaneously you are going to increase the value of that property. However, keep a precaution, there is a condition over here. Unrealized losses can be eliminated only and only when the cost can be recovered. That means if the cost of the property can be recovered, then you can eliminate the unrealized loss. For example, imagine a situation where the parent has sold property to subsidiary. The property's carrying amount in the books of parent was 18 lakhs. It was sold for 16 lakhs. When you try to look into one thing, can we recover the cost of 18 lakhs? You have to try selling that property to outside party. That means outside the group, if you try to sell, we come to know that the fair value of the property itself is 16 lakhs and the property cannot realize anything more than that 16 lakhs. That means the cost of that property, which was 18 lakhs, is simply not recoverable. In such case, the loss on sale, which is already booked by the parent company, though unrealized, but it cannot be eliminated because this is a kind of impairment type of loss. Why? If you can just look into the parent's records before sale of the property's carrying amount was 18 lakhs and if you are trying to find the fair value of the property is just 16 lakhs. So if the property is already sold at a loss has arisen in the books of the parent, that loss is not reversible. That means such unrealized loss cannot be recovered. So in one line, if I mention, I would say unrealized losses should also be eliminated provided the cost is recoverable. If the cost is not recoverable, unrealized losses should not be eliminated. Further, with respect to intra-group transactions or intercompany transactions, either I would say intra-group means within the group or intercompany means one company within the group is transacting with another company. There may be possibilities of subsidiary company borrowing money from parent company or debtor-creditor relationship. That means the parent company is a creditor, subsidiary is a debtor or vice versa, or one of the companies in the group has drawn a bill on the other and the other has accepted the bill. So that means in the assets and liabilities of these entities, there will be bill receivable and bill payable which are due to each other. In other words, the bill receivable is collectible from another entity within the group and bill payable is payable to another entity within the group. In such cases, the mutual cancellation or mutual elimination of corresponding asset with the corresponding liability will be needed. So debtor will be offset against creditor, bill receivable will be offset against bill payable. There will be offsetting or elimination of intercompany owings like loan payable and loan receivable and so on. So friends, you have to be very alert while dealing with this unrealized profit and loss part, because that will not only affect the balance sheet but also the profit and loss statement of the consolidated group as a whole. In other words, when you are dealing with any transaction where profit losses are involved, you have to give dual effect. One will come in the balance sheet, one will go in the profit and loss statement. However, when it is just intercompany balances that you are eliminating against each other, the profit and loss balances are not affected, only balance sheet values get affected. So when we are solving questions, we will incorporate all these discussion in the questions. So we will have few questions where the focus is only and only on dealing with that unrealized profit and losses. Then we will be solving questions where it will be a proper consolidated balance sheet question, and within that an additional information will be given with respect to the intercompany transactions and intercompany mutual owings. There will be some unrealized profits or losses. All these will be handled in that big scenario as well. But friends, before we step into those questions, let me give you an important note with respect to this point, that is elimination of intra-group transactions. So let us first write those notes. So based on what we have just discussed regarding elimination of intra-group transactions, you would write that intra-group balances and intra-group transactions and resulting unrealized profits should be eliminated in full. Unrealized losses resulting from intra-group transactions should also be eliminated unless cost cannot be recovered. Liabilities due to one group entity by another will be set off against the corresponding asset in the other group entity's financial statements. Sales made by one group entity to another should be excluded from the turnover and from purchase or related head or appropriate expense heading in the consolidated statement of profit and loss. Friends, write this much and then I take you ahead. All right, friends, you would have finished writing this whole thing. Let us move ahead and write up the notes further. Unrealized profit in inventories. Even this point we have discussed. Where a group entity sells goods to another, the selling entity as a separate legal entity records profit made on those sales. If these goods are still held in inventory by the buying entity at the year end, however, the profit recorded by the selling entity when viewed from standpoint of the group as a whole has not yet been earned and will not be earned until goods are eventually sold outside the group. On consolidation, the unrealized profit on closing inventories will be eliminated from group's profit and closing inventories of the group will be recorded at cost to the group. So friends, write up this part as well and then I take you ahead. Alright friends, you would have finished writing this whole thing. Let us move ahead and write some additional notes. Unrealized profit on transfer of non-current assets. Similar to the treatment described above for unrealized profits in inventories, unrealized intercompany profits arising from intra-group transfers of property, plant and equipment, intangible assets and investment property are also eliminated from the consolidated financial statements. Now what about unrealized losses? Unrealized losses resulting from intra-group transactions that are deducted in arriving at the carrying amount of the assets are also eliminated unless cost cannot be recovered. So friends, write this whole thing and then we move ahead. Alright friends, you would have finished writing this whole thing. Let us move ahead and take up questions of this type, starting with question number 45. Let us read this question. A parent owns 100% of a subsidiary. The parent sells a property to the subsidiary for rupees 16 lakhs. The carrying amount of such property in the records of the parent was rupees 18 lakhs. The parent incurs a loss of rupees 2 lakhs on sale. The property is in the subsidiary's balance sheet at the year end. It was observed that from the viewpoint of the group, the cost of the property is rupees 18 lakhs, which is recoverable at the reporting date if such property is sold to outside the group. Examine the treatment of intra-group transaction and pass the necessary journal entry. Let us first try to identify what exactly is happening in this case of intra-group transaction. Do you notice that it is a parent company which is selling a property to its subsidiary? The carrying amount in the parent's records was 18 lakhs and the property was sold for rupees 16 lakhs. So the parent has incurred a loss of rupees 2 lakhs on the sale. Now, is the property still lying within the group? Answer is yes, the property is still lying within the group, and now the nature of this loss becomes unrealized loss. If the nature of this loss is unrealized loss, such unrealized loss should be eliminated, but the condition is the unrealized loss can be eliminated only when the cost is recoverable. Notice one thing, from the viewpoint of the group, the cost is 18 lakhs, which is recoverable at the reporting date if such property is sold outside the group. That means there is clear chance of selling the property to an outside party and recover 18 lakhs. That means this loss which has arisen on sale of this property, the loss that has arisen for the parent company is clearly an unrealized loss, and the cost being recoverable, such unrealized loss should be eliminated. To eliminate the loss, what you would do is increase the value of the property, and the corresponding effect will be given to the credit of profit and loss statement of the group as a whole, that is the consolidated profit and loss statement. So let us see how to write up the answer. In your answer, you would first mention that as the cost of the property is recoverable, the resulting loss on sale is an unrealized loss. Such loss must be eliminated fully on consolidation. The property will therefore be carried in the group's balance sheet at rupees 18 lakhs. The consolidated income statement will show a corresponding increase in profit of rupees 2 lakhs due to elimination of unrealized loss. The entry on consolidation is as follows. In order to increase the value of the property and corresponding profit balance in the consolidated P&L statement, the entry that you will pass will be property account debit to consolidated P&L account, that is by rupees 2 lakhs. So friends, please write up this whole thing, and that will be end of the answer. Alright friends, you would have finished writing this whole thing. Let us move ahead and take up a similar question, that is question number 46. Let us read this question. A parent owns 100% of a subsidiary. The parent sells a property to the subsidiary for rupees 16 lakhs. The carrying amount of such property in the records of the parent was rupees 18 lakhs. The parent incurs a loss of rupees 2 lakhs on the sale. The property is in the subsidiary's balance sheet at the year end. It was observed that from the viewpoint of the group, the cost of the property is rupees 18 lakhs, which is not recoverable at the reporting date, as the fair value of the property is rupees 16 lakhs. Examine the treatment of intra-group transaction and pass the necessary journal entry. So friends, this is more or less similar scenario, but with one major difference. In this case, as compared to the previous question, what is different is here the cost is not recoverable. So can we observe one thing? When the parent has sold a property with a carrying amount of 18 lakhs for just rupees 16 lakhs, it has incurred a loss of rupees 2 lakhs on sale. However, when you look into the fair value of the property, it is just rupees 16 lakhs. Means the transaction could be clearly indicating a transaction at arm's length price, and the resulting loss over here, even though it is unrealized because the property is still lying within the group, even though the loss is unrealized, but the same cannot be reversed, the same cannot be eliminated, because the cost to the group, which is 18 lakhs, is not recoverable. So let us see how to write up the answer. As the cost of the property is not recoverable, the resulting loss on sale cannot be eliminated on consolidation. The property will therefore be carried in the group's balance sheet at rupees 16 lakhs, which represents fair value. No adjustment is required in the consolidated financial statements. Why no adjustment is required? Simply because there is an unrealized loss, but you cannot eliminate that unrealized loss, and the reason for not eliminating that unrealized loss is straight given, because the cost for the group is not recoverable. So friends, do one thing, please write up this whole thing, and that will be the completion of this answer. Alright friends, you would have finished writing this whole thing. Let us move ahead and take up the next question, that is question number 40. Let us read this question. A parent owns 60% of a subsidiary. The subsidiary sells some inventory to the parent for rupees 35,000 and makes a profit of rupees 15,000 on the sale. The inventory is in the parent's balance sheet at the year end. examine the treatment of intra-group transaction and pass the necessary journal entry. Now friends, what you are going to do is observe one thing: who is selling goods to whom? First of all, it is the subsidiary that is making sales to the parent. The goods were sold for 35,000 and the profit made by subsidiary on the sale is 15,000. The point is, everything would have been fine, but this inventory is still lying within the group, and if the inventory is lying within the group, in the consolidated balance sheet it would definitely appear as an inventory. Now for the group, the cost of this inventory would not be 35,000 because 35,000 includes a profit element of 15,000. For the group as a whole, the cost will be 35,000 minus 15,000, that is 20,000. So first of all, inventory should appear at cost. Now if you have to bring down the inventory value by rupees 15,000, which can now be understood as unrealized profit included in the assets of the group, you will have to give a counter effect, and that will be reduced from the profit. Now the question is, whose profit? Obviously it is a subsidiary that has sold goods, so it will be reduced from the profit of the subsidiary. And the impact of reducing the profit from the subsidiary is that 60% of that profit will be suffered by the parent company itself. Now with that other 40%, it is non-controlling interest that will get reduced. It is because whatever profit subsidiary earns, 40% of that is shared by the non-controlling interest. If the profit of subsidiary reduces, it is non-controlling interest that will also suffer. So let us see how to present the solution. In your solution, you would first mention that the parent must eliminate 100% of the unrealized profit on consolidation. The inventory will therefore be carried in the group's balance sheet at rupees 20,000, which represents the cost, and the 20,000 has been determined by taking the sales revenue minus the profit included in that sale, that is 35,000 minus 15,000, that would give you cost of 20,000. The consolidated income statement will show a corresponding reduction in profit of rupees 15,000. However, when you pass the accounting entry, it will not be a direct effect on the profit. Your cost of sales will reduce by 20,000 and the sales revenue would reduce by 35,000, giving an automatic impact on profit reduction by 15,000. So let us first write down this much and then we move ahead. Alright friends, you would have finished writing this whole thing. The entry for elimination of unrealized profit will be required now. So you would write that entry this way. You will debit the consolidated revenue because you are going to reduce the revenue by 35,000. You are going to simultaneously reduce the cost by 20,000, and the net difference, which is the unrealized profit, is the amount by which inventory will get reduced. So the journal entry will indicate consolidated revenue debit to cost of sales to inventory, and finally what you get is the reduction in profit as well as a simultaneous effect on reduction in inventory, and the profit that you are trying to reduce is basically an unrealized profit which must be eliminated. Now further you should mention that the reduction of group profit of rupees 15,000 is allocated between the parent and non-controlling interest in the ratio of their interest, that is 60% and 40%. So write up this whole thing and that will be end of the answer. Let us move ahead and take up question number 41. Let us read this question. In question 40, assume that it is the parent that makes the sale. The parent owns 60% of a subsidiary. The parent sells some inventory to subsidiary for rupees 35,000 and makes a profit of rupees 15,000. The inventory is in the subsidiary's balance sheet at the year end. Examine the treatment of intra-group transaction and pass the necessary journal entry. So friends, without problem you will be able to answer this question now with just one little change compared to what you have answered in question number 40. So what you will do is, in your solution you are going to write up that the parent must eliminate 100% of the unrealized profit on consolidation. The inventory will therefore be carried in the group's balance sheet at rupees 20,000, that is 35,000 minus 15,000. It gives you net of 20,000 as cost, and the consolidated income statement will show a corresponding reduction in profit of rupees 15,000. Write up this description and then I show you the entry part as well. Alright, after writing this description, let us move ahead and write up that entry. So the entry on consolidation is as follows. What you will do is, the consolidated revenue will get reduced by 35,000. So consolidated revenue account debit 35,000. The cost of goods sold will be reduced by 20,000. So to cost of sales 20,000, and then you are also going to reduce the inventory by that unrealized profit amount of 15,000. So to inventory 15,000. Now caution to be placed over here. This time the net effect on profit reduction of 15,000 will not affect NCI, because this time this profit was earned by the parent company and not by the subsidiary. So you would write that description that in this case, since it is the parent that has made the sale, the reduction of profit of 15,000 is allocated entirely to the parent company. So quickly write up this whole thing, and that will be end of the answer. Let us take up question number 42. Let us read this question. A Limited, a parent company, sold goods costing rupees 200 lakhs to its 80% subsidiary B Limited at rupees 240 lakhs. 50% of these goods are lying at its stock. B Limited measures inventory at cost, that is at 240 lakhs. Show the necessary adjustment in the consolidated financial statements. Assume 30% tax rate. Now friends, what do we find over here? First of all, in an intercompany transaction like this, you should always look into who has made sales to whom. So here it is the parent company which has made the sale to its subsidiary, and the goods costing 200 lakhs were sold for 240 lakhs, and the subsidiary company which has purchased the goods has measured its inventory at cost, that is 240 lakhs. Now the entire transaction was for 240 lakhs, and 50% of these goods are lying in the stock of B Limited. So what we can say is, the profit made in this transaction by the parent company was difference between the sale price and the cost, that was 40 lakhs. Half of this inventory is lying in the stock of the group, which will consist of unrealized profit of half of 40 lakhs, and that would be 20 lakhs. So 20 lakhs of unrealized profit needs to be removed from the consolidated financial statements. Once 20 lakhs of profit is removed, this time we have been informed tax rate as well, and therefore there will be deferred tax effect on this. Mind it, from the taxation viewpoint, the tax base amount would always be the actual transaction price or the invoice value. What I am trying to tell you is, 240 lakhs is the transaction price. If half of the goods are lying in stock, as per tax records, the tax base value would be 120 lakhs, that is half of this, whereas in the accounting records you are going to reduce the inventory by 20 lakhs due to that unrealized profit. So the tax base value of the asset will be greater than the accounting value or the book value of the asset or the carrying amount of the asset in the group. I am not talking about the separate financial statement, I am talking about the group. So if the tax base value is greater than the carrying amount, what would simply happen is it will result into a deferred tax asset, and the amount of deferred tax asset will be 30% of the unrealized profit, whatever you are going to eliminate. So you are going to eliminate 20 lakhs of profit, and 30% of that would result into a deferred tax asset. So the amount of deferred tax asset will be obviously rupees 6 lakhs. So let us see how to present the answer. In your answer, you are going to simply write A Limited shall reduce the inventory of rupees 120 lakhs of B Limited by rupees 20 lakhs in CFS. This will increase expenses and reduce consolidated profit by rupees 20 lakhs. It shall also create a deferred tax asset of rupees 6 lakhs, since accounting base of inventories, that is rupees 100 lakhs, is lower than the tax base, that is rupees 120 lakhs. So friends, write up this whole thing, and that will be end of the answer.